Hey everyone, this is Dan, your resident Digimon fan. Welcome back to the channel. Long time no see. Today I wanted to talk about video games. So you may have seen a few shorts that were released on my channel where I'm playing through different Digimon games emulated on the Steam Deck, and I've been having a lot of fun messing around with Digimon games on the Steam Deck. Playing through old ones and new ones and just having a blast going through Digimon's back catalogue. But like a lot of people, in the last week or couple of weeks, I have been playing Palworld. So for those who aren't familiar, this is Palworld. It's an early access game that was released on Steam and Xbox Game Pass for both the console and the PC on the 19th of January 2024. It is a survival crafting game, which is obviously quite common for early access games, but the main thing that separates this game from the other early access survival crafting games is that it's also a creature collection game. So here we have my bird friend. His name is Ragnarhawk. Looks kind of like a cross between Zapdos and Talonflame from Pokemon, and we're going to be doing a lot of Pokemon comparisons in this video because that is what this main conversation is about. Ooh, a huge egg. Nice. So as I said, I, as well as a lot of other people, have been playing a lot of Palworld since it came out. It scratches an itch which the Pokemon franchise has been unable to scratch for a very long time. And this is just, despite being an early access game, it covers off so much ground that other games are unwilling to do. And obviously there's the conversation around potential plagiarism with things such as Robin Quill, but I'm not going to touch upon that in this video. That's not what this video is about at all. There's plenty of other videos on that topic if you want to take a look at that. But what I really want to talk about is where this leaves Digimon games. So obviously there's been a lot of conversation around what this means for Pokemon. You know, is the Pokemon Company going to sue Pocket Pair? Is the Pokemon Company going to try harder for their next release because of the massive success that this game has garnered? And for those who aren't in the conversation, this game has become the second most played game in history on Steam in terms of concurrent players. It's breached over 2.1 million at the time of recording. Whether it goes higher or not, I don't know. I feel like it's probably going to plateau now. But it sold something like 5 million units in a single weekend, which is absolutely bonkers. The game is selling like hotcakes, and it only had a budget of about $7 million, which in game terms is not very much, especially with their return on investment being that they are getting hundreds of dollars back in sales. But what does this mean for Digimon? This is a Digimon channel. I'm not here to talk about Palworld or Pokemon. I want to talk about how this makes Bandai look way worse than Nintendo, in my opinion. I know people don't talk about Digimon anywhere near as much as Pokemon, and there's a huge divide in terms of popularity. I'm not denying that at all, but I think it is an important thing to think about as Digimon fans. You know, what could this mean for Bandai, if anything? So the most recent game that was released for the Digimon franchise was Digimon Survive, which I personally really enjoyed. It's a visual novel style game with combat, which is in a grid. It's turn-based. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Fire Emblem and games like that. And this is basically the only type of game that Digimon was willing to release at the time. I know that there are other Digimon games supposedly in the works at Bandai, but this is the most recent game that we have had. Obviously this game doesn't have mass market appeal by virtue of the fact that it is a visual novel style game. It's turn-based combat. It's not something which the general market will enjoy. There are going to be fans of Digimon and fans of games like this that will enjoy it regardless, but I think that generally speaking it was not considered very successful. So when we're talking about Palworld and how its success could have an impact on the Pokemon franchise, think about it from Digimon's perspective. Even though people complain about the quality of Pokemon games nowadays, I mean Scarlet and Violet, a lot of us enjoyed playing it, myself included, but we could not get past some of the flaws. You know, the game ran really poorly, it looked really ugly, and there were just certain things that were so dated about it that it just wasn't a very good showing, really, from Nintendo. And before that, Sword and Shield was a similar thing. It was, I'd probably say, better in some ways, worse in others, but it's definitely been a trend with Pokemon games. They kind of rest on their laurels and just release a game that they know will sell anyway. And that's what the difference is. So based on the most recent figures, I think Scarlet and Violet for the Pokemon franchise sold over 23 million units. So if we assume that they sold around the $50 mark, then that is a huge sum of money. And I don't necessarily know what the budget of Scarlet and Violet was, but I imagine that they probably made a massive profit on the game. If they had spent anywhere near, you know, the 50 million mark to make Scarlet and Violet, which would be ridiculous anyway, then I would be embarrassed for them, to be honest, based on the quality of the game that came out. So the main controversy is the fact that Palworld only cost $7 million to make, and yet has made such a huge profit, and looks so good. You know, it takes stuff from a lot of games that people like. It's got bits of Elden Ring in there, it's got Breath of the Wild, obviously you've got Pokemon, and you've got Ark Survival Evolved. They essentially made a game based on all of their favorite games, which, you know, parody and imitation, or is it plagiarism? I don't know. I'm not here to be the judge of that. Obviously, it's harder to come up with a more unique idea and a unique game, but the point of the matter is that they made something that is hugely successful and it's doing what Pokemon games are not willing to do. But for Nintendo and for the Pokemon company, they still make a huge amount of money. Like, even though these games are generally critically panned and people say that they don't like them, they're still going to buy the next one. They still bought this one, they'll buy the next one. Until people stop doing that, the Pokemon company will continue to make that kind of money. Whereas Digimon games don't really get that, unfortunately. Digimon games are stuck in this world where they have no chance of success, and that's by no means because of what Digimon is. So here's what I mean by that. So this is actually technically the latest release in the Digimon franchise. It's Digimon World Next Order for Steam. It was released in 2023 for Steam and Nintendo Switch, but it's not a new game. I think it originally released in like 2016 or something like that, so it's not technically the latest release. But the main issues with this release was that it was considered a very lazy port, and I would agree with that. I mean, this game released in 2023 and you can't play it in resolutions above 1080p. So if we go to settings, the highest it will go up to is 1920 by 1200, which for a game in 2023 on PC is just absolutely appalling. This is just Bandai being lazy, honestly. They didn't really touch any other part of the game. It's essentially just a wholesale port of Digimon World Next Order from the consoles with all of the DLC bundled in, and also a new run button. That's pretty much the only change. And so people see a game, which is a re-release of a 2016 game that they've most likely already played, released on Steam in a state that is not particularly satisfactory, and so they don't buy the game. I mean, this game on Steam at the time of recording has only sold about 31,000 units, which is just paltry. In comparison, Digimon Survive sold 500,000 units, roughly, about 500,000. That might be across multiple different consoles, but that's still where it is. And then, for comparison, as I said, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet sold 23 million units, and Palworld has already sold over 8 million units at time of recording. So you can see how there's a massive problem there. And the problem isn't necessarily that people don't want Digimon, it's just that Bandai just don't make good Digimon games. Okay, that last bit might be a little bit harsh. There are good Digimon games, and I'm not saying that Digimon World Next Order is not a good game. Like, I really enjoy it, and I think that the Steam version is the definitive version to get, especially if you have a Steam Deck, just saying. You know, these games are fun, and they're clearly meticulously made and well thought out, and there's a lot of character in them. All of the Digimon games really are like that, but this is kind of the problem, is that they are decent games, but they're also old. Like, as I said, Digimon Survive came out in 2022, this game came out in 2023 as a re-release from 2016, and there haven't been any Digimon games for a really long time. You know, Cyber Sleuth came out years ago, and they haven't followed that up either. So whilst people are getting worked up about Palworld trying to dethrone Pokemon, I would argue that Bandai should be the ones that are even more worried about this, because they already have a pretty poor mindset. Bandai's problem seems to be that they're not willing to branch outside of Japan. This is quite evident, obviously, with things like the Vital Bracelet, where by the time they finally released a Western Vital Bracelet, the Vital Hero, in Japan they were already generations ahead, and the kinds of fans that are into that sort of thing were already buying the Japanese product, so it just became a complete flop. And so Bandai then look at that and go, oh, people don't want a Vital Bracelet in the West because they're not buying them, so I guess we just won't try next time. And that applies to games as well. So Bandai will put out things like the re-release of the Digimon World Next Order game on Steam, see that it doesn't sell, and take that to mean that Digimon isn't wanted in the West. And that's just not true. It's not the fact that we don't want these games, it's just the fact that the games aren't releasing in a good state. And when they do release great games like Cyber Sleuth over here, Cyber Sleuth Complete Edition is an excellent game, and it's awesome that it's on loads of different consoles, including Steam as well. You know, Digimon Survive is a great game, Digimon World Next Order, all great games, but they don't sell in the West because they are not given the love and attention that they are given in Japan. Whereas Pokemon and now Palworld, they are methodically looked after in Western regions as well as the Japanese market, and that's why they are so successful. They actually look at what people want and provide it. Maybe not so much on the Pokemon side. So it's a real shame because, you know, obviously we all love Digimon. You wouldn't be watching this video if you didn't. And we want it to succeed. We want Bandai to continue investing in Digimon, not just in Japan, but outside of Japan as well. We want there to be good games. We want there to be good anime. We want good products. That's just, we don't ask for much. It's a beloved franchise with lots of fans, but we just are starved over here. We're starving. And so something like Palworld comes along and it just makes us reminisce, you know, oh man, this is kind of how I felt playing Digimon World back in the late 90s, or this is how I felt playing the original Pokemon on the Game Boy. It was something new and fresh and exciting, and we just don't get that from these old franchises. So that's kind of where we are, unfortunately, with Palworld. You know, as fans of decades-spanning IP like Pokemon and Digimon, we are having to resort to playing other games that are, I mean, inspired by those franchises, just to scratch the itch that Nintendo and Bandai are not willing to do. Like, I don't know about you, but I would absolutely kill for a game similar to Palworld, but with Digimon. You know, a big, expansive, open world. It doesn't have to look too fancy, and it doesn't have to have the sort of Breath of the Wild treatment, you know? It could be a digital landscape. It could be set in the digital world. Like, that would be the ideal, right? Say, take Digimon Adventure and File Island. If we could have a game where you're just going around File Island and you're meeting Digimon and you're having to fight them and have them join your team. Obviously, catching is not quite the same in Digimon. You know, in other games it's things like Digiconvert and stuff like that. Bandai could totally make a game like this. And I'm not saying that, you know, shame on them for not having done it yet, but I think this could definitely be a lesson to them. If they released a game like this, but with Digimon, maybe not exactly the same, you know, obviously certain mechanics would have to change, you know, guns, for example. But that's kind of where the differences with the Pokemon Company and Bandai are when it comes to the games. The Pokemon Company can look at Palworld and just ignore it, because they, to be honest, are a little bit ignorant. You know, they don't really care about what fans want so much as they just care about continuing to churn out something that will generate a profit. That might be a little bit unfair, but it certainly seems like that based on maybe the last decade's worth of releases. So Pokemon don't really have to worry about Palworld. Sure, it might affect their next sales. Like, for example, I haven't bought the DLC for Scarlet and Violet. That was before Palworld came out. I just had decided to vote with my wallet, and I think a lot of other people will probably do that when the next Pokemon game comes out. It does put a bit of pressure on the Pokemon Company for their next release. But for Bandai, you know, this is their opportunity to look at Palworld and think, we need to do something like that. It doesn't need to be copy-paste. It doesn't need to be, you know, plagiarism, because that's like plagiarism squared at that point. But they could totally do it, you know? An open world adventure game with Digimon. It's all we as a fan base had ever wanted, and it would bring people back into the Digimon fold, you know, into the card game, into the anime. They could do so much more than they already are, but unfortunately they probably won't. And it's a real shame. So that's all I really had to say on the subject. Sorry if this is a bit of a rant. Hopefully it comes out as coherent. If not, I'll try and edit it to make it coherent. But I've had these thoughts going around my mind over the 50-60 hours I put to Palworld already, and I just wanted to put them down into a video just to kind of air out my frustrations with Digimon games. I think this has made it even more blatant to me, and I just really hope that Bandai do something with Digimon soon. We really need to see something. Obviously, we've got Digimon Con coming up soon, so maybe we'll get some news at Digimon Con, who knows? But I'm honestly not holding my breath based on their track record. It's a real shame. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Did you play Palworld? Did you enjoy it? Do you really want something like this in the Digimon franchise? Or what are your thoughts on the more recent Digimon releases? Let me know how you feel, and I'll see you on another video soon. Take care.